That's what brings results. It's the intentionality. We could talk about goals. Oh, we want to double revenue, we want to double profit this year. You got to put pen to paper. So the intentionality around setting those foundations, around formulating a strategy, and then a plan to measure, is that working, and how to execute that strategy is what can really get someone out of that impact zone and up to the next level.
We'll be joined with Matt Shaffer, who is a seasoned business leader. He's worn every hat from engineer to CEO to consultant.
There are different measures and different zones for different industries. I've found from working with a number of businesses, you have the classic founder is an engineer or an expert in the craft, and they turn that into a business, and that grows to a point where they need more people. And at some point is going to outgrow either the founder's skill or the founder's knowledge, or both.
If you're ready to break through your next impact zone, stick with us. It's going to be a good one. Matt, thanks for joining us today. I'm excited about our conversation because we're going to be talking about a problem that a lot of business leaders face when it comes to growing and running an efficient business. And that is your skill set. That's what you do. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you, a little bit of your story, and how we ended up here.
You bet. Short story.
Yep.
Short story. My wife and I have 2 boys. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary, and we've only been in Colorado Springs for about 3 years. So before that, we spent about 16 years outside of the Seattle area. So I've had a few careers. The first one was Air Force. I was active duty for 12 years. Took me around the world. And then I got into technology, specifically software engineering. Did that for a couple of years and figured I was a better project manager than an actual software engineer. Then I joined a firm and became a project manager. Then after a couple of years of that, me and some friends said, you know what, we could probably start our own company to do this. So literally across 2, maybe 3 days, we made a decision to get 6 guys together and start a company. Wow. And the next week we were in business, right? So that's kind of going to play into the experience of learning the hard way that I bring into this journey is, I didn't go get an MBA somewhere, right? I didn't have, I never was a business owner before, but between Thursday and a Monday, I became CEO of a new firm, right? So I still own that firm today. And after a few years of doing that, I was in a CEO peer group, and we're going to talk about the value of those. Yeah. And I had a CEO friend that owned a commercial property management company say, hey, why don't you come do a little consulting? I ended up being the president of that company and running that. So got to take for a long drive a lot of the management, leadership, and organizational design things I'd learned over the years. And then got back into organizational behavior and technology after that.
That means a lot because I think a lot of people that get an education and they go out as an expert, they haven't actually done it before. That's a different deal. Like, I'd much rather talk to somebody that's done it before, helped others do it, and you've got a long track record of that. So
you got to have knowledge and experience to get to a certain level of effectiveness, right? And there's 2 ways of doing it. You can get the knowledge by getting the experience. You can get the knowledge by going to school and then getting the experience, right? There's no right way, no wrong way, no better way, just how different people have different journeys, and that was mine to get there. So, really it comes down to, what do I love to do? I love to help people. Mm-hmm. I don't want good people to get the same stripes on their back I got because I didn't know what to do in business, right? Yeah. And had to learn the hard way. So I just like sharing what I've learned to help other people.
Yeah, and that's really great. I think sometimes people, have to learn the hard way, and they think that they have to figure it out on their own, that they have to... They work themselves into the problem they're in and they have to solve it themselves. And taking a more humble approach to be able to learn from somebody else's experiences is so valuable. And so that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to spend some time talking about some topics that I think a lot of business leaders struggle with or have firsthand experience with, and some of the solutions for those, and kind of where you come into play and how you help people in those situations. Because you are a business consultant, right? Like you wouldn't consider yourself a coach, although you do some coaching.
Right.
So maybe we start there. What's the difference?
Good question. That's something I help people understand the difference between a coach and a consultant, right? Not that there's a person is purely a coach or purely a consultant, right? You cross the line a bit. But a coach is typically trained and is expected to ask great questions to draw the answer out of the person they're coaching, right? And a consultant, you typically hire to tell you what to do, right? And like I said, it's not purely one or the other. You cross some lines, but I find I use some coaching techniques to do mostly consulting by sharing those stripes on my back, right? To
That
ask
makes sense.
questions about where are you, what have you tried, what's going on, what do you think's happening, what do you think's going to happen, and then bring some experience and knowledge to the table to combine there to help that person see where they think they should go and how they should get there.
And that makes a lot of sense because businesses, it's not just like a formula. Like there's one formula that, okay, when you do this, then you do this, and you do this, and before you know it, you're selling your business for tens of millions of dollars and life is really great. The reality is it's a little more dynamic than that. And depending on the journey that they're on and where that business owner wants to take his business really dictates the things they should be doing. You know, if they have a high growth focused mindset and they're intent on like, let's double in the next 5 years, right? They're going to need to have different things in place and be building kind of a different company for the next 5 years. Versus somebody who is maybe they've reached a certain point and they like it. It's really comfortable. They're getting to the end of their career. They're looking at retiring and maybe selling their business someday. That looks really different. So the approach obviously has to be a little different.
Well, you're right. It's not one formula. When you said formula, it made me think of Einstein drawing something on a chalkboard, and it fills up the whole chalkboard. That vision came to mind, but it's really 30 formulas, right? Let's call it 30. It might be 20, it might be 50, right? But the job of that leader and that business owner is to know what formula to use and pay attention to here and now for this problem or this opportunity. Right. And so we were talking about management and leadership earlier, and that's really the job of that business owner is what needs to be priority for right now, right? And what formula do I need to go grab? What tool do I need to go grab that's been time tested through typical business wisdom and experience to use in this situation to solve people problems, to solve cash flow problems, to solve operational efficiencies, or to solve not having a great strategy or not having a strategy.
Yep, or having the right strategy, right? So there's one business owner, and he had really high aspirations for generating a large volume business, but he was running a net 10% profit margin on like a good day. And I remember just inside that just like grayed against me. I'm like, you're trying to build something that is really flimsy at the end of the day because economic changes could soak up that 10% of profitability. And now he's in crisis mode again. And then like every little thing could turn into another crisis mode. I'm like, why don't you try to make a business half the size or a third the size, but you built it 3 times more profitable than your current? Like, what if you designed that and started building that? And he came around eventually, and that's what he's working toward, which is neat to see. But that is a very different business with a very different strategy.
Right.
And nothing says you have to stop growing. I think there's a lot of value in creating a profitable business with as few as customers and employees as possible, because that's when you're the most agile and nimble and you can make the biggest adjustments quickly. When businesses grow really large and then they go, oh, profitability, that's important. We need to fix that. It's a lot harder. And that's where I think having coaches, mentors, consultants, all of that can be really helpful to guiding the decisions that are made in a business. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was the impact zones that businesses leaders run into. In our industry, there are natural impact zones. The first one is around $1 million. For an IT company to get over $1 million, it can be really a struggle. Another one is 3 million, and I've talked to business owners that are like, we've exceeded that a bunch of times, but they just keep circulating, above and below and above and below, and they go years, and it feels like wasted time, and usually profitability is not that great. When you're stuck in that cycle, it's like stuck in the doldrums is what I like to call it. 5 million is another common one, 10 millions, but I'm sure it's different in different industries and, at different scales. What do you see as some of the impact zones that actually, some of the causes for those impact zones? Like, how do people end up in those positions in the first place?
I think there are different types of impact zones, but first, why don't you define what's an impact zone?
Yeah, so an impact zone is, I would say, when you've grown to a certain point where the things you've done that got you to that point aren't the same things that are going to get you where you're going. And when you can realize that difference of what you've done that's been successful to get where you are and realizing what needs to change to grow, that's how people get, in my opinion, past those impact zones. But there's a lot of different types, like you were just alluding to.
So is this somewhat synonymous with hitting a ceiling
Yes.
every kind of step in growth. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And you can feel it when you talk to these business leaders, because there's this extra stress that comes with that.
Yeah.
Because they know, like, if you're not growing,
You're dying.
You're dying, right? Yeah, that's what people say. Like, you don't want to tell them you're dying, but inside, I think a lot of people know it, because you need some healthy growth, and you need to be growing. And I mean healthy, meaning you're providing services at a greater profitability rate. As you grow and scale, you should be able to scale into more profitability if you're doing it right. But that's not always the case. I mean, some businesses don't scale profitably at all.
Yeah.
Many times it goes the other way, and they're just building a bigger problem for themselves when they try
Very
to grow.
true. So I think those impact zones, they're different measures and different zones for different industries, right? But I've found from working with a number of businesses that you have the classic founder is an engineer or an expert in the craft, right? And they turn that into a business, and that grows to a point where they need more people. And at some point, that's usually going to, the size of the business and how well it's doing is going to outgrow either the founder's skill or the founder's knowledge, or both typically,
Yes.
right? And so that can cause stress or frustration for that founder running that business of, why am I not getting the performance that I want, or why am I not getting the growth once I hit this certain level? And that's certainly one thing to look for. A dollar sign across all industries isn't really a thing to look for.
Probably
right?
not the case, right?
Different
I
in a
was just using
services
that
industry
as an example.
than a manufacturing industry, right? But a size of team can also be a point across any industry that you hit that impact zone. Because when the business scales, I like what someone at Boston Consulting Group said once of growth creates complexity, but complexity inhibits growth, right? So as a business is growing, you have to bolt more things on. You have to put more automation. You need more systems. You need more processes. You need more people. Well, at some point, the founder's knowledge of those processes, or how to lead a team that's this cross-functional, because now you have 5 departments, might exceed what they know or how they know how to do it, right? So it's at that point, how do I learn more? How do I know what I don't know? How do I get to know what I don't know now that I'm willing to know what I don't know, right?
Yeah. And that's where you got to go outside your 2 ears, right?
Yes.
You have to have external input, and maybe ideally from somebody that has been there before.
Definitely.
They've seen this, they've solved it before. And you haven't, because, like, I always kind of tease, like, every day is the biggest company we've ever run. It's like every new day, it's like we continue to grow, and it's like those are new challenges, ones that I've never seen before, and I'm looking to other people that have scaled businesses to find those solutions.
Right. And interesting that I've been learning about and love learning about leadership and management for my whole life, really, right? It started early in my Air Force career. But it wasn't until a few years ago I actually heard someone say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to surround ourselves with the people that have already been there and done that.
That's great.
Right? It might be a peer in someone's business of the same size, whether team, revenue, or what have you, but they probably solved the problem you solved before, right? So I found, for me, having run 2 companies, that a CEO peer group is just a fantastic place to be, right? Even if you're not a CEO, if you're a middle manager or director or whatever level, get in a peer group of people there where you're going to be with those that have been there, done that, right? Or at about your level or a step ahead is always the best as well.
What's your feeling on a peer group, of being in an industry peer group specifically, or being in a general peer group that involves multiple industries? Do you see values on both ends of the equation?
That's a great question. I think for the growing business, with the leader of the growing business, let's call him the owner, the CEO, being in a group that has multiple industries in it, I've seen and experienced being even more valuable, because you're not breathing your own industry exhaust, so to speak, right? You got people from a different mindset in there. And in those CEO peer groups, you're usually not talking about bringing issues to the table to help others solve that are super tactical in the craft, right?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't go to your peer group and say, how do I manage driving trouble ticket times down on this type of request managed, or delivered by this specific skill set? Now you're going to talk to your industry buddies about that, right?
Yeah.
But when you come to like a CEO peer group like that, you're talking about, do I take on investment to grow the business, right? When do I hire more people? I have this opportunity. I got offered a sale for my company, right? Someone wanted to buy my company. What do you do? I was in a group with a very successful restaurateur that owned a number of high-end restaurants. And he had someone come in and steal all the copper from a building he owned that was a restaurant when, like a week later, the building was going to sell, right? So you get into those legal issues, you get into personnel issues, and somebody's been there, done that in the group. So back to your question, I find that when you're flying at that level and solving those contexts of problems, having the people in different industries there is super helpful.
I found the industry peer group that I'm in has been extremely helpful, being super tactical and delivering the result that we're looking for. And so there's value in that. But having, I've got 2 coaches that I work with on a regular basis, having their input, because they're not specific to our industry, has been invaluable as well. And just the more I can build relationships like you, it's always helpful to get feedback outside of what I would normally consider.
And the more perspectives, the better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because these coaches, these advisors, your peers, they aren't your bosses that are directing you what you have to do, and you have to say yes, sir, and salute and go do it, right? You could take a piece from here, a piece from here, a piece from there, and a piece from there, because everybody's going to come at it with a different angle. So I'm always a fan of get as many perspectives as possible, right? I'm a bit of a fanboy around behavioral assessments, right? I love them. I love taking them. I love talking about them. I love pointing other people towards them. And the more you get, the better, because none of them are the same, right?
Yeah,
so you learn something new every time.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting, going back to the impact zones. You touched on the leadership, and I think you were talking about what happens when the leadership stops growing. Essentially, when leadership stops growing, so does the business. So that's an impact zone, right? So and sometimes a business will outgrow its leaders, and unfortunately, if the leadership doesn't step up, some of the leadership might need to change for that business to continue to grow, or it gets stuck in one of those impact zones. What's another example?
When a team, a company, grows to a certain point, well, a company really, if we're talking about small to mid-sized business here, you're going to get more departments. You're going to get more depth and breadth needed of functions, right? The 4 main functions across any business being find work, do work, keep score, right? And I like to put administration people in there with that, right? So you'll need an HR function to help take care of people, both from compliance and from talent development. You'll need more sophisticated accounting and finance process procedures and systems at some point, right? Legal might get more complicated. So as things grow and become more complex, then the org design may change. A great way to kind of take inventory of should our org design be is you need to take just a basic inventory of what do we do in this business, right? A common tool that's been around for a long time is called a RACI matrix. RACI stands for responsible, accountable, contributing, and informed, right? And imagine a simple spreadsheet where you've got tasks listed down one side, or processes or decisions, right? And then roles, which might be people, could be roles in the columns. And then at the intersection, you put an R in there if that person or role is ultimately responsible. You put an A if they're accountable. Accountable meaning it's the person actually getting to done. They're doing the work. C is consulted, where before this process is completed or decision is made or the task is done, this person needs to be consulted. The I is for informed, where after the process is complete or the task is done, the decision's made, this person needs to be informed that it's done or this is the way we went. So I've done this with many organizations, and it's a super simple, fast exercise. And the bigger the organization, the more functions. It could be a longer list, but you group those maybe by department, right? And you look at, okay, does a role or a person have a disproportionate amount of responsibility or accountability, right? Which could say we got too much on their plate. Sure. And you might see that someone else does not. Another thing this is good for looking at is alignment, right? I'm huge on alignment. I think the alignment has everything to do with business success. So when a person understands themselves, themselves. And when we understand each other, then we can align ourselves to the right role and the right function. Well, if we've got these functions, processes, and tasks inventoried out and who's doing them, this is an opportunity to look at it and say, oh, wow, Matt's wired like this, and we've got him in the right role looking at what he's accountable for, right? You wouldn't want to take a very big picture person that thrives in ambiguity and make them the doer of some very specific, very task-oriented, predictable kind of process, right? It's going to drain their energy to do that. So a RACI matrix is a great way to look at what needs to get done, who's doing it, then how does that inform our org chart? That'll get the right distribution of labor. It'll ensure that you've got the right people doing the right things.
Yeah, so a lot of businesses will look back, especially successful ones, and feel, wow, they've really made a big impact and they're moving in the right direction. And then they hit an impact zone, and it's like hitting a wall that they didn't expect to hit, and they don't understand what happened, what broke. And an example of your org chart is many times to run a business that is over a certain threshold, it requires a different level of leadership. Like, so in our industry, an example is like, starting out MSP eventually gets to the point that they need a good manager to just oversee the operations as service management specifically. But then as a company grows, they might need a director of operations because they're solving more operational challenges, they're building more processes because they're doing it at a larger scale. But that could also continue to evolve, and they might need more of like a COO role because they need somebody that is highly, highly strategic, managing an even larger company. So there's different areas where you hit impact zones and your leadership team has to change. You know, to the same point I made earlier, at one point, I could not keep up with all the one-on-ones in my company. I'm like, when did that happen? It was like, I need help with one-on-ones just to have good communication with my team. And another point, I hit a point when I'm like, I need leads of each department. We need somebody that models and answers questions within that department of how things function. So there's different areas of growth and maturity that need to happen, or you hit these impact zones, and they can be really hard.
And when you hit that impact zone, going back to where do leaders hit that ceiling, the ceiling being the start of the impact zone, you either need more knowledge, right? Or you need more skills, more talent. Mm-hmm. And that might be in yourself as a leader, or maybe in someone else, and increasing that management team or adding a director of ops like you were talking about.
So another impact zone that I think companies can hit is really around their culture, and that could be a sneaky one. I personally lived this. There was just a time in our life where our company values, as well as they resided deep in my soul, they weren't alive in the organization, they weren't written, they weren't public, and they weren't being modeled. And I started seeing that in the team. The team was becoming more entitled and more focused on themselves and what's in it for me. And I just used the word team, but a lot of them cared about themselves more than their department or their team, right? So is all this like erosion that was happening over time. This was during the COVID lockdowns and all of that. And, you know, we started with hiring one engineer that could significantly outperform everyone else on the team. And he was hated. He was hated by the rest of the team. And so slowly but surely, people started self-selecting them out because I hired somebody that had a good work ethic and values. And then we'd hire another person just like it, and I would support them. And I started implementing, you know, our culture and our values and using it to guide decisions, even hiring and firing during that time. And over time, my whole team kind of cycled through. My peer teases me, they call it the Matt Harvey Culture Improvement Program because they're like, you didn't improve your culture, you replaced everybody. Well, the reality was I had a lot of people that weren't going to be the right fit for where we were going. I really care about this one because it's made our company more enjoyable to work with. Like, we now are doing meaningful work with people we really care about. Mm-hmm. And that brings a lot more heart to the organization. Our values are now topics that come up in our huddles because people talk about, you know, having to maintain grit, which is, for us, it's maintaining character and excellence, regardless of if it's appreciated, you know, and in terms of what that looks like. An example we were talking about earlier was like our offboarding process. needs to be as stellar and awesome as our onboarding process. Just because a client's leaving, that doesn't change the quality of our work or how we work. So it's those kinds of things becoming more ingrained into our company that started really making a transition. We've almost tripled in the last 4 years,
Wow.
just from mostly from just really good people that are dialed in, the vision, direction, culture. They care about this company, they care about the team, and that has moved us forward. So like that's a low hanging fruit. I'm amazed at big organizations that have terrible culture, and I'm thinking that's costing you hundreds of millions of dollars. Not actually making a healthy culture within your organization. So like that's one where I would start pretty close, even before I get heavily strategic. Thankfully, like I did that about the time that I had coaches, so they were influential in some of the decisions and the direction we were moving. But that was impactful for sure.
The first thing you mentioned about this new engineer you hired is how many tickets he could get done in a day, right? But I bet that wasn't what actually shaped the culture, was it?
No,
Because that was productivity measure. What was it about him being so productive that actually moved the culture or started that movement?
well, sometimes when you hire somebody new, there's a lot of excitement, and he came with that, with a lot of excitement, a lot of wanted to know what was possible. He wasn't going to use the norm that it was culturally like acceptable to be his limit. And that's what I knew. I wanted to start hiring people that wanted to be the best that they could be. So I started seeing some of those character qualities come out, and not just in him, but other people that we started hiring. And we started breaking records, right? Because they're fun. It's really fun to work for and alongside winning companies and people. And so when people feel like they're winning in the organization, they don't dread work on Monday. They come in and they're kind of excited what's going to happen. It's kind of like the drama at work, but it's really exciting and it's fun to be a part of.
And where a leader can really move the needle there is setting those goals together as a team, right? And involving people at all levels on many parts, most of the parts of setting, what goals do we want to set for ourselves? What goals do we want to set for our team, right? And because when the team makes those goals together, for everyone on the team, those are want to items, not have to things, because somebody told me this is our goal, right? So the inclusion in defining those goals, as well as behaviors within a culture, you get so much farther, so much faster when you include most everyone in that.
Exactly. All right. Well, what else is there when it comes to impact zones have you seen in the industry?
I think intentionality around management, right? A company operating system is a great way to be intentional about management, right? Just like with a culture, you mentioned your values. I bet the values were in your head since day one of what you thought the values were for the
Not quite
company.
day one, but once you get enough life experience in business, you're like, it starts to become really apparent the things that you value.
Right. How can we expect other people to value those unless we write them down and make them part of our culture of reviewing them, right? I've seen some taken to a great extent before by organizations that they'll make how well is this person living out behaviors in our culture, or how well are they living out our values, be reviewed by their peers, a couple times a year. So it's good feedback for that person to know the way I'm choosing to behave, does that fit with our values and does it fit with our culture? Culture being a set of values that determine how we behave at work, right?
Right.
So back to planning and setting goals, including the team in that, right? In management. So when everyone has a clear picture of how does our business work, right? How do we make money? Remember, I went to work for a great company years ago that was part of boot camp is how do we make money? And everybody got the same boot camp. It didn't matter if you were a C-level or this was your first job coming out as an intern, right? How do we make money? What is our culture? What are our behaviors? Then getting into strategy formation, right? Once you've set the purpose of why do we exist, why do we want to make the world a better place, you can get into the how, which is the mission, right? How do we do that? What do we do? Then you get into your values, which you've articulated, and the values can really never change. They're set, right? And you've got to decide on 4 or 5. You can't have 10, right? They have to be memorable. And your values aren't your values unless you're willing to have them cost you, which in your case you did by some people left the organization because they didn't align with the values, right? And so that costs to turn over that employee, but those truly are your values at that point.
Yeah.
So once you set those foundations in a company operating system, which is a management framework, then you move on to a strategy, right? What is strategy? A strategy is a set of choices you make that work together to get your prospects to choose you in the marketplace over the competition, right? A strategy is very customer focused. It's not internal focused. That's planning. And that's the difference between having a strategy and a plan. Is a plan is what are we going to do with our resources? But you have to come up with the why is the customer going to choose us first, right?
Which is the reason why a customer would even hear your pitch.
That's right.
If it's all about you and your services and how great you are and awards you've won, you've lost them, right? But when you talk about real business challenges that you solve in the marketplace, well, now that's something they're interested in. So I think when it comes to having a vision and having something you can articulate, eventually build your power statement. So you have this is what we stand for and this is what we do. And you can communicate that clearly, not only to customers, but your team, because you have to have alignment.
Yes.
You talked about alignment earlier. That's where you start building momentum for growth.
Yes. So if you've created a strategy and included all the right people in there, because it's not just a CEO and the other two C-levels go behind a closed door and create the strategy, right? That should involve everyone that's involved in customer delivery, right? To have input into that strategy. Form that strategy, then you create your plan. Right? Look 10 years out, look 5 years out, 3 years, 1 year out, and then turn that into an annual plan. And how are we going to break that annual plan down quarterly, and what are we going to measure? So creating that clarity and focus on the business priorities for the year in an annual plan that's what brings results. It's the intentionality. Right? We could talk about goals. Oh, we want to double revenue. We want to double profit this year. You got to put pen to paper or finger to keyboard and actually put it in print for people to look at and propagate that, right? And that's a plan. So the intentionality around setting those foundations, around formulating a strategy, and then a plan to measure, is that working, and how to execute that strategy is what can really get someone out of that impact zone and up to the next level.
You said there's not a formula per se, but what you're putting together is the structure, the key pieces. So you need people, you need the right people in the right seat, like Jim Collins talks about all the time. You need to have the right organizational structure, which really comes down to the right leadership, so that at the right size, so that the company can grow and scale. You need the leadership to be intent on growing and learning. Because the company is growing and learning, they're going to need to adapt and change so they can do different things to allow the company to continue to grow, not just the same things that they've done before, right? So that's another one. What else is there? I feel like I'm missing one.
Well, there's always multiple angles and multiple perspectives, right? People, process, tools is a great one. When I sit down to talk with entrepreneurs about their business and hitting that impact zone or getting through that impact zone, I have what I call a business wheel that I created, right? And it looks like kind of a pie, but at the center of the pie are the 4 really key foundational things to a company. That is, what's your strategy, what's your management, what's leadership. Those are 2 distinctly very different things, right? And then what is a culture? So you've got to get those things correct. You got to get them set in the beginning, and then you can move out into those concentric circles, looking at your people, process, tools, looking at administration, at technology, and then get intentional about, according to our commercial model, our financial model, about how do we make money, what plans do we need to make that we believe will get our customers to choose us, i.e. our strategy, and measure, is it working or not?
Yep. So I think there's some resources we can provide people that are really helpful. You obviously being one of them because you've walked this out. But I've got a great coach that does business planning. And so the idea behind it is your business planning isn't just something you do at the beginning of the year and then it collects dust all year and then you dust it off and say, how did we do? Did we achieve what we wanted to?
Yeah.
No, it actually has to be used to guide your quarterly plans and your monthly objectives and week by week, how you're going to achieve those goals. And it needs to be done with a long-term perspective in mind, like what you want your life to look like. if you're a business owner and you're sacrificing so much, which every business owner I've met, they sacrifice a lot of time, even time away from family to make their business work, right? But what is the end goal? What is the target? So you got to have that in mind when you're doing your business planning. So that's a great resource. That same person does a culture survey. We do it twice a year with him. Price is great. It's free because this is his passion. This is what he wants to do for people. And help kind of his way of giving back. But I can connect these people with these resources and they can get an idea of what their culture is. When I first started with him, my culture score was like a 62 or a 63. It was really low out of 100, and we grew that over the next 3 years to being in the 90s, like the low 90s. So we were the fastest improving culture that he had done out of about 165 companies. And we had the highest score that year. So it was a real big milestone to have actually made that much improvement and score that highly in culture. But it's your own people that are scoring you, and it's brutally honest.
And it didn't happen accidentally because you said you wanted to improve the culture, right?
It
took a lot of intentionality.
I mean, the assessment was free, right? But they had a lot of costs. There was a lot of time and intention that went into it. And you don't just like cruise control because you have a high culture. Like it just starts to erode and undermine over time. So it always takes intentionality. And I've always thought culture is not just top down, but it's bottom up. It needs to be live in the organization. So those are some really great resources. I think the strategy piece is an area where people can really benefit. Like the wheel you described, walking somebody through that and figuring out, well, where's the lever I need to pull that would have the biggest impact in our company?
Right. It's all about priorities, right?
Yeah.
Going back to those 30 to 100 formulas it does take to run a business. Which one gets priority this year?
Yeah.
Which one gets priority this quarter, right? And when we look at creating a strategy, those set of choices that will cause customers to choose us, and then we turn that into a plan, then managing against that plan and looking at, is this working or not, key.
It's funny. People ask me, wait, aren't you an IT company, like business owner? I'm like, well, yes, but I love solving business problems. This is why I'm so excited about this conversation and this topic, is I love solving business problems. And I really think technology can be incredibly powerful, more than most people realize, at solving a lot of business problems. But that's not the full picture. And that's why I wanted to have you in and have this conversation around, business and process and culture and all this, so that we could, have more of an impact here in Colorado Springs and have a bigger, just help more people. That's my heart. You started off at the very beginning. You love to help people. Yeah. I really share that same. And so it's fun to work alongside you and to have more of an impact here.
It's great to find somebody with a similar interest and passion around teams and people and organizations and helping them to be better. You mentioned technology, right? And how that can be used to make work life better and to make operational excellence improve. Just this morning, I was thinking about, AI. Everybody's talking about AI, right? And they should be, because it's going to be as much or more of a disruptor as the mobile phone was or the internet, right? Mm-hmm. But something I was thinking about is all businesses are still going to have all the same problems and need help with all the same problems and opportunities. And AI is not the solution to all of those, right? AI is just a new, incredible tool that people can use for efficiencies to solve problems or to seize opportunities. But it's not going to make any of the usual business problems go away.
Especially people problems, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, people problems need people to help solve them. And we need good leaders. Like, if there's anything we could impact, it's the level of leadership.
Yeah. Let's talk for a second about the difference between leadership and management.
Okay.
Have you ever given any intentional thought to that?
Well, I've always thought leadership is more about where you're going, and management is about what you need to do to get there.
Right.
Did I hit it on the head, or would you define it a little differently?
I would agree in spirit with that, right? My definition of leadership goes way back to the Air Force, right? It's the art of motivating people towards a common goal, right? And management is the proper application of resources, money, time, relationships, you name it, right? And so I like to talk to people in management or leadership positions about the differences between management and leadership. And when you say, have you ever worked for somebody that could really get stuff done, but they were a terrible leader? Oh, yeah. So, well, they were managing, they got to done, but they didn't really, motivate well to get people to done, right? It might be out of fear or threats, what have you. Have you ever worked for a fantastic leader that motivated you and motivated the team, but they couldn't get to done? Don't give them anything to manage it, right? That helps people see the difference between leadership and management. So when we have someone that's in call it a management or a leadership position, we'd hope they'd have skills and talent in both of those areas and are always developing skills and talent in how do I apply resources to get to done well, and how do I motivate people well.
That's really good. It reminds me of the 6 types of working genius assessment. Like, I'm galvanizing, so I really care about heart and direction. And I've always felt guilty, like, but that's not actual work. Like, I need to actually do actual work, but it's a critical piece of the puzzle. But that also means I need to align myself with an operations person who has maybe tenacity, which is another one of the 6 types, which is tenacity is all about getting over the finish line. Like, their dopamine hit doesn't happen until it's done and the cherry's on the top and it's signed off and they can go, nice. Okay, now we can do the next thing. Yeah. So to your point, people that can't seem to get it past the finish line, they probably don't have tenacity as one of their 6 types of working genius.
And if we have done our right strategy formation on top of our business foundations and come up with a good plan, then we can align people with those strengths that through doing some assessments, they realize they have, and we realize they have, and get them aligned. Here's the magic A word, right? To the right roles, so that operational effectiveness goes through the roof and you break through that impact zone.
Yeah, this is really good. I feel like this conversation has been really great because we've touched on a lot of topics and a lot of very specific things that are needed, and they're all needed at different degrees in different businesses depending on their journey, but they're all important considerations. So hopefully this is helpful and it provides some information that will help others as well as they grow their companies. So if somebody wants to work with you, how do they find you? How do they reach out to you?
They can go hit salient7.com or reach me at matt@salient7.com, and love to just sit down and have a conversation to see where is the person in the organization's journey today. Right? We'll take a look at that business wheel and see where does it hurt, or where's the big opportunity that's right in front and right in front of the person or the organization, and then go from there.
And I would assume as a consultant, you can come in at varying degrees, right? It's not like you have a program that you have to put out and they have to invest X dollars, right? But depending on their needs, do you have different specific packages or services that you provide that can meet people's needs depending on where they're at?
So because every organization, every business's needs are different because they're in a different journey, in a different industry, it always looks bespoke. It always looks unique, right, of how they need help and from whom. So me and my team and my network, we can help people across strategy and planning. Implementing company operating systems is at the core of what we do. And when you implement a company operating system, you set those foundations, you create that strategy, you create the plan, and you also do a little culture alignment in there as well. So we'll sit down, do that discovery, and see where's the opportunity and figure out what does that business need at that point in time.
That's perfect. I love the flexibility of that.
And prioritizing the needs is also what a good discovery time can do as well, right? Coming out with a business roadmap of what are the most important things opportunities to seize or problems to solve or ways to scale. There's probably 50 things that can be done, but what should be done in the next year and what's the impact of those is what a good discovery engagement can do.
That's great. I've been telling everyone around here, less but better. It's like our theme.
I love that.
In everything we're trying to do right now. So, well, thank you very much for your time today and covering all these topics, and really appreciate you coming
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hey. Well, thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. If you'd like to work with Matt Shaffer, feel free to reach out to him at his website at salient7.com or send him an email. If your business is located in the Colorado Springs area and you would like some strategic IT help, feel free to go to steppingforward.tech and click the yellow Chat with Matt button. I would love to have a conversation with you. Until then, we'll see you in the next video.